We are live for the Week 11 edition of DFS Discourse. For those of you that are just tuning in, welcome. For those of you that have tuned in to our prior streams, welcome back. Thank you guys for joining us. I am a host for the evening. My name is Jesse Clark. You can find me on Twitter at jcrockett24, and I am joined by my co-host, as usual, Joe Andre. Joe, thanks for joining me. I will let you plug your stuff, and then we can kind of get this thing rocking.
Yeah, so you guys can find me on Twitter at FFJVAPHL. So, quick recap of Week 10. Week 10 ended up being an interesting one where I believe you only needed 218 points to win the Millie Maker. A lot of things that we thought were going to go right ended up busting, most notably the Seattle Rams game. So I forget the percentages, but a good majority had Lockett and Metcalf. That was definitely in the 15%. You had other guys that went with Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. They all busted as well. The only way you succeeded in that game is if you went full contrarian and you just played the Ram running backs. Most notably, I believe it was Malcolm Brown who had 2 touchdowns that day. Or if you wanted to get really creative, and they were dirt cheap too. It was 2,200 was for the Rams defense. As we've seen the last few weeks, Russ Wilson has been just pressured left and right. If you're watching that Thursday night game right now, you see the Cardinals are pressuring them right now, as the Bills and Rams have both done the previous 2 games. So we head into Week 11, and we're going to discuss Week 10 actually a little bit too, because I know Jesse and I wanted to briefly talk about that, but I just want to give a little overview of Week 11. If you guys have looked at the prices, it's now what I would call a typical DraftKings week. The prices are a lot more restrictive. The first 10 weeks, we've been pretty fortunate in a sense that you could have jammed, however you wanted to build your lineups with 2 or 3 stud running backs, filled it in with some cheap receivers, a cheap tight end. But if you look at the prices now, you have Kamara at 9,200, you got Dalvin Cook at 9,000, you got Derrick Henry at 8,000. The whole idea of trying to jam it in gets a lot harder, considering right now as we speak, and we'll talk about the injuries that we've found out about today in terms of just who's practicing and who hasn't. There hasn't been value that's opened up yet. Well, I would say probably the most notable value at this point right now, it looks like DeAndre Swift's not going to play. It seems like he's going to be in the concussion protocol and probably not get out of there by the time Sunday we get to Sunday. So we have Adrian Peterson in play against a Carolina defense that got absolutely torched by Tampa Bay, most notably Ronald Jones. But as of right now, he's pretty much the only value we have on the board right now. So it's a very tough, tight price week. We're going to need to get creative, and we're definitely going to talk about some things that we can do in terms of maximizing production and maximizing value in terms of trying to put together the best possible lineup here.
Yeah, and you spoke on the injuries briefly. That there are some big names to monitor here, and we kind of vary with which day we're able to do this show, and on occasion we've had to do it on Thursday night. And we've always prefaced these shows by just warning you guys, a lot can change in 2 or 3 days. So just make sure your guys' ears are to the grindstone and you are paying very close attention to these injury reports. That could change a lot. That could open up a lot of value. That could completely change roster construction. So a lot of our recommendations tonight could very well change, and I'll just be honest, will change. It's going to change. So I know how I work. I overthink things. I constantly dig until I can find some sort of advantage. And those types of digging really kind of start to come together about Saturday for me. So you'll start to see most of the same type of analysis in our DFS Darlings article that is going to be released on Saturday. So make sure you're tuning in to that. It'll get released on the Fantasy Coaches podcast website and probably on Twitter as well. So just make sure you guys are keeping an eye out on that. But some of the analysis here can be used for that article, but then you're going to have those things that come up last minute. For instance, I tweeted on Sunday morning last week with the breaking news that DeAndre Swift was going to take over and start that game, and it sounded like was going to be more involved. I said it was a very wise call to try to pivot off some of the chalk and go to DeAndre Swift at the last minute on Sunday morning, and boy, did that ever work out. So, it's just those types of things that you need to pay attention to and keep your eye on. And, feel free to reach out to us. I think it makes this show a lot more enjoyable when we have comments in or questions in the comments feed in the chat. Make sure you guys are typing those in. We'll get to those sometime before the end of the show for sure. Normally, right after you post it, we'll try to touch on that. If not, post your questions on Twitter, reach out via text. We're more than happy to help. I know I've had a couple friends reach out to me personally over the last couple weeks, noticing that we've done this show and have started reaching out to me for advice on the DFS front. And it's just super fun talking like that. It's super fun, giving some guys advice when maybe this is their first year they're doing it or something, and it's just a learning curve. So we're not experts by any stretch of the imagination, but we do very good work. I'll pat ourselves on the back. We dig deep. We find the advantages. We really look into the stats, and there are advantages to be had, as we've seen in the past couple weeks. And as you, I believe, were the more successful person out of the two of us last week. Joe was able to put together some good lineups there in cash. So I, on the other hand, was not. I lost almost everything I put in, but you're going to have those weeks. So that being said, we have recapped week 10. Let's go ahead and preview this week 11 slate here.
All right, so we're going to start with the Bengals and the Washington football team. So Bengals come in. I just blanked all of a sudden there. The Bengals. Damn, I can't remember who the Bengals played last week. That's right, they played the Steelers. Yes. So the Bengals absolutely got slaughtered by the Steelers. Steelers were definitely in a rebound spot after just pretty much playing down to the Cowboys. So the Steelers decided to make a statement. Bengals just couldn't keep up. What we did see in that game is the continued development of the chemistry between Joe Burrow and T. Higgins. That's going to be one that's going to be very nice to see over the next few years. Washington comes in after valiant effort against the Lions, but ultimately they just couldn't get it done. What's most notable is just J.D. McKissick's seen an absurd 28 targets from Alex Smith over the last two games. I'm just happy getting 78 targets from this guy, but he's averaging 14 targets per game since Smith took over. It's just absolutely ridiculous. In terms of what most people would probably look at it in the sense that there isn't much there, but when you kind of break it down, this game actually projects to be one of the more faster-paced games. I think there's production that on both sides of the ball that can be exploited here, and I'll turn it over to Jesse and see what he sees in regards to what we can definitely garner out of this.
Yeah, so I'll caution everybody in saying that normally when you have two bad teams like this playing, a lot can go wrong. So I would not put all my eggs in the basket here, but I think what makes this game so interesting to me is that a lot of these players are at really reduced prices on DraftKings for whatever reason. Maybe it's poor performance of late. Maybe it's just they're bad teams. Regardless, DraftKings has these guys priced pretty low, and that's why this can be a fairly stackable game here with several pieces being in play. So two mediocre to bad defenses always helps as well. Like you said, the pace of play helps. For me, I think there's only a few plays in this game that I'm interested in. So it's McKissick or Gibson, whichever you prefer. I tend to prefer McKissick just because I like that passing safety, full point PPR settings in DraftKings, all those catches. Gibson's played 3 third down snaps all year. So if he does not get into the end zone or rack up over 100 yards, you're going to struggle there with the upside. So, granted, they are a 1.5 favorite, I believe, the last time I checked. So,
yep.
That's the positive there, is that he has that game script going. And I know he's finished with much more expected points per reception scoring when they have been in positive game scripts, or I believe just leading, I think was the stat that I read. So that being said, it's those two guys, or it's Boyd or Higgins. And I know it's a tough matchup on the outside for the Washington corners are doing actually really well this year. I think Kendall Fuller's actually exceeding expectations there, and everybody around the league knows he's a good cornerback, but he's played really well. They have been able to, limit their. Is that a touchdown?
Yeah, Tyler Lockett got it.
All right, I'll take it, Russ. That's better than the last 2 weeks has started for me. So I'll take it there. Live game update. They took a 14-7. Well, I guess we can't say 14 yet. 13-7 officially. Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf both with touchdowns from Russ. So I digress. I was saying that the matchup for the Bengals, the Washington has really struggled in the slot. So that is the matchup we want to take advantage of. Who plays in the slot most for the Bengals? Tyler Boyd. But T. Higgins played 15 slot snaps last week against the Steelers. So do not rule him out. Oh, speak of the devil, I said, didn't want to put the cart before the horse there, and it is 13-7, missed extra points. So, that being said, we were discussing the Bengals receivers. I think both Higgins and Boyd are in play here. I believe, their prices are just too cheap. I get McLaurin is a really solid play, but he's like the 5th highest priced receiver on the week. And for me, that's pretty tough to pay up when we have these high priced running backs that we're going to want to get at least a little bit of exposure to. So that's kind of the way I'm playing it. Did you see anything differently in this game?
Yeah, as you mentioned in regards to Tyler Boyd, he definitely has a favorable matchup this week against Jimmy Moreland. At this point right now, we can all pretty much just pencil in Higgins over AJ Green in terms of the depth chart. AJ Green, he had a nice 2-week period where he saw double-digit targets, but he's done. I think he went 0 for 5 last week. He saw 5 targets, didn't even catch a ball. In regards to the Redskins, I was kind of digging in a little bit here. So we all know how bad the NFC East has been. In the 4 games that the Redskins have played versus divisional opponents, between the Cowboys, Eagles, and Giants, those 4 games, those teams have averaged 15, close to 16 points. In every other game not involving those teams, the Redskins have given up over 30 points a game. At a floor of 30 points a game. So as Jesse mentioned, these prices for the Bengals, I forget what Joe Burrow was last week. I believe it was 6,200, and they dropped him down to 5,500 here. He's dirt cheap. And we're to talk about in the next game regarding Jameis Winston and all, but 5,500 for Joe Burrow for as many times as he does drop back and throw the ball. I definitely want to have some Joe Burrow this week. It looks like Mixon's not going to be playing here, so that's going to put Giovanni Bernard back in play again. So on the Redskins side of the ball, the most expensive option on either side is Terry McLaurin. He's done it against everybody. He's had very few bad weeks, but you're at the point now where you're at the pay to get him. The opportunities to get him at below 6K, it's over. The talent's there. He's been solid all year. So, again, this game is very stackable. You got Logan Thomas in at 3,300 against a Bengals defense that's just been absolutely killed by tight ends. So, as much as Logan Thomas has burned us this year, he's back and play again this week. And believe me, I was playing Logan Thomas. I think it was the first 4 weeks, and at some point, I guess I had to get off that ship. It was just sinking my money too. But yeah, so Logan Thomas is again back in play, 3,300, very affordable, probably as low as I want to get at tight end. But again, that position, as we'll talk about later on, it's not expensive at all. So, but yeah, so this game definitely presents some opportunities. I don't know if Jesse's got anything else here, but I think we've covered it all.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention briefly that I think I almost said Redskins, Washington football team's defense is in play as well. Just the pressure rate against that offensive line, as good as the weapons are for Cincinnati and as good as Burrow is, he does get sacked quite a bit, and they could force a strip sack or something crazy, and you get a defensive touchdown. So I would say that they're in play. As bad as the defense has seemed to be of late, I do think they're in play. So that will pretty much wrap it up here. I think we're ready for the next game.
So let's go to the Falcons and the Saints. So big news out of the New Orleans side of the ball. Drew Brees is going to be out this week, and it looks like probably at most 2 to 3 weeks. And that has moved the line. So the Saints opened up at 7.5-point favorites. That line's dropped to 5, as well as the total that opened up at 52.5 points. That's also going down to 50.5. On the Falcons side of the ball, they're coming off a bye week after a victory against the Broncos. Calvin Ridley, according to reports from various Falcon reporters, he seems to be looking halfway decent in terms of running routes. So it looks like we may get Ridley back this Sunday. I want to see how that. I want to see how he comes in terms of the injury report and how he looks in practice tomorrow. So we're definitely going to get Ridley back, and that definitely helps Matt Ryan's upside. Again, on the Saints side of the ball, we're going to have Jameis Winston in there. He's 5,900 on DraftKings. We all know how prone he is to the turnover, so that's something we got to bear in mind. It's a different game. I mean, we've been known to see the Saints and Falcons have some high-scoring affairs. I guess more or less the question is, how is that going to get there this week? Just based on we don't know if Calvin Ridley's 100% playing, and just the Jameis Winston factor. So other than that, aside from Alvin Kamara, just seems to get it done every single week. I mean, think about it from a perspective where the Saints barely touched the ball in the first quarter against the 49ers. I think they didn't even have the ball for a minute. I think they had some like silly turnovers that whole first half, but Kamara still gets the 30, 35 points, however many he got. I mean, he's just absolute matchup proof at this point. But yeah, I guess that's the main question I have with this game is how's everybody else going to get there in this game just with the various injuries on both sides of the ball? And I'm going to turn over to Jesse, see what he thinks here.
Seems like this is probably going to be the highest owned game on the slate. Is that what you're assuming?
Yeah, just looking over the other games, I would say most of the ownership is going to come between this game. It's going to come from the Bengals and the football team. And let me just scroll down the rest. It was going to come from the Lions and the Panthers, but I think injuries at Bridgewater and DeAndre Swift is going to reduce some of the ownership there. I could see maybe some coming from the Titans and Ravens. I could see the Ravens coming in a little under-owned just with how Lamar's performed this year. But, yeah, I would say that the main two ownership games are going to be the two games we discussed tonight.
Okay, so that leads me to want to be contrarian. Jameis Winston's first ever start for this in this new offense. This is typically a rhythm offense with Brees. That's not the type of quarterback that Winston is. Now, he has typically force-fed one wide receiver, with Evans all those years, and logic would seem to think he would go to Michael Thomas. But we still don't know what the connection is going to be between them, and we don't know the types of routes that Thomas runs is going to be what Winston excels at. So there's just a lot of unknowns. So for me, I was initially really liking Michael Thomas, but now that I think about it more, the only way that I think I'm going to end up with Michael Thomas in tournaments, at least, is if Kamara sits. If Kamara sits, that opens up a lot more targets, opens up a lot more opportunities. It just seems like the opportunities will come to Michael Thomas and we won't be able to pass that up. So, but if Kamara plays, I don't think I'm playing Thomas. I think Kamara is in play. And maybe a Jared Cook because you have those seam type routes. Jameis has been prone to throwing to his tight end quite a bit when he was back in Tampa Bay. So maybe Cook up the seam, given the fact that Jameis has a little bit stronger arm, they can stretch the field a little bit more that way. That's kind of the route I'm thinking. But again, I just struggle because this isn't the type of slate that you have to have the highest owned game. Like there's no doubter, surefire game that's going to blow up like we had with the Cardinals and Bills last week, or several other games that we thought were just absolute no doubter spots. I think we can fade this game for a large majority of our lineups and just separate ourselves from the field and hope that this game doesn't shoot out, and just hope that all these added variables that are unknown are going to, help us. So that's just the kind of approach I'm taking. DFS King is chiming in here. How much for a lineup? I'll try it out. If it hits, I'll buy more lineups. Well, we can give one out. We've done this in the past. We can just give one out. We don't.
We haven't done that in a while. Yeah, we'll do it tonight.
Yeah, we're not going to charge you guys. Now, if you win the Millie Maker or something, maybe throw us a few bones with the lineup. But we're not going to charge you. We'll just give out a lineup towards the end of this stream here, and we'll see if we can hit. So we've done it in the past. We've taken a few weeks off, and we'll do that again just for you, DFS King. So make sure you're tuning in here in a bit as we wrap this up, and we'll produce a lineup there. So that's basically all I have here. The one note I did want to note on the Atlanta side of things is we kind of briefly touched on this before the stream. If Ridley does not play for whatever reason, I think that opens up Hurst as a possibility, Hayden Hurst. I think he's going to go way under-owned. And if we're looking at a matchup to exploit, the Saints have been really bad against tight ends, and just the more target share that is available with Ridley out, I think Hurst is definitely in play there. So that's kind of my analysis from this game. I wonder if you feel the same way, if you're mostly going to be fading this, or whether you are actually very much interested in this game.
I like the Hurst call. Definitely a good call, especially if Ridley does sit out. In terms of Alvin Kamara, definitely keep an eye on him, but he did come out after practice today, and he did say he feels good. So it definitely signals that he could play on Sunday, but again, let's wait for tomorrow, see how much he practices, whether it's in a full or limited basis, and we'll see how he comes up on the injury report. A lot to look about Kamara. He's averaged 8.5 targets per game in his last 6 against the Falcons. Amazingly, he doesn't have a touchdown against the Falcons in those last 6. So as he's had touchdown regression off his 6 touchdowns from last season, I have to think he's due for a touchdown against the Falcons this week if he does play. But yeah. So one of my big successes from last week was just fading that Seahawks-Rams game. There was just a few red flags that I guess came up for me as the week just drug on. We just got so accustomed to just you play the Seahawks, you play whoever opposes them. That's just what it's been every week so far this season. All but 1 week, I would say. I guess it was the game against with the Dolphins. It's been profitable where you just play the Seahawks and their opposing players. So with this game, like Jesse said, there's a lot of questions on both sides of the ball where it's probably just going to be individual plays over trying to stack this game here. If Kamara plays, I'm definitely going to be on Kamara. If Ridley does miss, if he does miss, Hurst is on my radar. You have to look in terms of Matt Ryan, how productive he's been when he's missing one of his receivers. So we go back to week 3 to week 5. I believe he missed Julio on both those games, or at least 2 of those 3 games. He only averaged 11 fantasy points in those per game in those 3 weeks. He definitely struggles when he doesn't have both of them on the field. I guess the only exception being that game before the bye against the Broncos, where he did put up a decent showing. But more often than not, if he doesn't have both his perimeter receivers, his effectiveness does go down the tubes a little bit there.
Yeah, and one other note, obviously, if Kamara does sit, Latavius Murray is almost like a lock button play. You almost have to just shove him in there. So obviously, keep that in mind. You said 5,900.
Yeah, he's 5,900, so he's 33 off Kamara. It's a lock. Here's Latavius Murray's 2 games the last year when Kamara set out. He had 12 targets. He had 6 targets. He had 36.7 fantasy points, and he had 32 fantasy points. He's just pencil him in. Just get him in.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so let's move on to the next game then. I think we're pretty much over the Atlanta-New Orleans game at this point.
So let's see. We can talk about let's go to the Titans and Ravens. So Titans coming in. So Jesse and I were talking about this game from a ownership perspective and a game theory perspective. So if you saw how New England played last week, so the Ravens were missing Calais Campbell and they were missing Brandon Williams. Damian Harris had a field day against that front seven. And he had over 100 yards, and I believe he had a touchdown too. So it definitely puts Derrick Henry in play. But Jesse also made a great point too. Since Taylor Lewan has missed time with his torn ACL, it's definitely reduced Derrick Henry's overall effectiveness too. I mean, he hasn't seen a really smashed game since that last game that Taylor Lewan played with against the Texans. That was pretty much Derrick Henry's last smash spot. So it's definitely something to keep in mind in regards to what could become a good play if Calais and or Brandon Williams do sit out again this week. On the Ravens side of the ball, I mean, if there was ever a spot for Lamar Jackson to get it right, this would be the week. He could do it through the air against the Titans. He could do it on the ground through the Titans. It's just a matter of how they want to do it. Again, like we were talking about the tight end position, Mark Andrews caps out at 4,900. That's the highest price tight end, as Waller, Kelsey are both off the main slate. They play on Sunday night, so it puts Mark Andrews in play. You have definitely a tourney play, but I mean, you've seen the Titans get burned through the air, but again, it definitely takes some intestinal fortitude to get Marquise Brown. I mean, he hasn't had a decent game since week 1 against the Browns. It's been a long time, but definitely puts him on the 20 radar. But yeah, more or less, I mean, if there's ever a week again for Lamar Jackson, maybe right off his 2019 MVP season, I mean, this is the best spot he's going to see.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
I got sidetracked.
Money bags ain't listen to us either. I mean, 3K is a lot of money to lose there. I wouldn't listen to me either if I lost 3K. So nope. I hear you.
Yeah, I'm not too sure that I believe that from Moneybags, because I think if you would have followed a lot of our advice on the stream, I think you would have put together a pretty damn good lineup. So that being said, the Andrews call, I like it. I think I like other cheap options at tight end better. My bold call of the week, if this is even bold, Lamar Jackson's rushing for over 100 yards this week against this defense. Their rush efficiency combined with the Titans' rush efficiency on defense just outweighs. I mean, it's just, so good of a matchup for Lamar and company. So I think Lamar breaks loose there. I think we have over 100 yards and probably a touchdown on the ground. So, keep that in mind. The upside in the passing has been limited for Lamar this year, so we do have that element, but I do really like him. In fact, I'm probably penciling him in as like one of my 2 or 3 quarterbacks I'm even going to consider playing this week. So I would feel comfortable just playing him naked and playing, maybe a Lamar Henry stack. Man, that might be a good contrarian build. What do you think about that stack, Lamar Henry? I mean, that feels like a good game stack there, a little mini stack.
Yeah, and I mean, those are my 2 favorite plays of that contest. I definitely feel that's viable. My only concern is how much both teams run the ball. Where it's going to be a pretty quick day at the office for both teams. But viable, yes, I do like the contrarian approach to that. But I think overall, my favorite play is Lamar here. I think this is it for him. I mean, if he's not going to get it right this week, he's got to get it right at some point. I mean, the talent's there. I mean, I guess that's just the one thing. You give these defensive coordinators a whole offseason of video, it's just going to catch up. I mean, I just don't think Lamar Jackson's adjusted to those adjustments yet. But maybe this is the week he just does it, and I do have strong conviction that he's going to do it.
Yeah, I agree. That's pretty much my only analysis from this game. I don't love a lot of other options in this game, to be completely honest with you. There's just, whether it be price or matchup, one or the other, it's just, I like to go in other ways here. So just my my 2 cents, and I think we can probably move forward. Is that the last game we're going to break down, or are we going to go position by position, or do we have another game on the docket?
Let's go position by position. I mean, it's an overall just tough slate. There's not many games that stand out as ones from a stackability approach or just honestly an overall watchability. I mean, granted, there's 5 games this week that feature 6-3 teams facing off against each other. It just stinks that 2 of them are, well, actually 3 of them. You have one tonight, you got one Sunday night between the Chiefs and Raiders, and you got the other one between the Bucs and Rams. They're all in prime time, so only 2 of those 5 are on their main slate. It's an overall just kind of like, I guess, icky main slate from that perspective, I suppose.
Yeah. So I think we should just go position by position here. Quarterback first. It's pretty thin for me. I'm playing Lamar. I'm playing Justin Herbert. I might plug in Big Ben. That's kind of what I'm looking at there. I don't have a whole lot of other options that I love. I'm fading Winston. I'm not playing him. So that's my calls for the quarterback position.
Yeah, so I guess I'm looking at Big Ben, and I'm hoping that as they did against the Cowboys, they play down to the Jags, where the Jags kind of make it more of a game where the Steelers are forced to throw the ball, kind of like how they had to throw the ball against the Cowboys. I mean, who would have thought the Cowboys would have been up headed into that fourth quarter where Big Ben was still everybody thought they were going to blow the doors off them. It was going to be more a Connor Steelers stack, but it ended up actually being Roethlisberger actually having to play that game. So I'm hoping that Jacksonville can make a game out of that, where I'm going to have a little bit of a Ben. It's tough on this one, but they struggle so much against the run. But I'm looking at Cam a little bit this week too. I feel like Cam can actually get it done against with his legs against the Texans. So I'm going to have a little bit of exposure to him too.
Yeah, I didn't even really consider him. The upside, man, is just so limited there. If you're not getting 2 rushing touchdowns and 70 yards rushing, it's tough sledding there. But I do respect it. I think that Cam call is a pretty good one. So that being said, let's move on to the running back position. So it's Dalvin Cook is probably going to be one of the more popular plays on the slate. We discussed Derrick Henry. Kamara is definitely in play if he is in the lineup. If not, Latavius Murray is in play. It looks like Adrian Peterson's going to be a big value down at 4K with Swift out. I like me some J.D. McKissick. Gio is probably in play as well. Those are the guys that are jumping off the board to me. Is there anybody else? What do you think about Miles Sanders? I know we kind of discussed him last week with our, if we wanted to fade the top end running backs, Miles Sanders was a good fade or a good pivot to those fades. And man, oh man, did we run bad with that luck. You couldn't run worse than that. So it was a really good call by us. I think it was a really good play in general. But this Cleveland rushing defense has actually been pretty good. So I'm a little unsure about that one, but I feel like he's one of the few elite running backs on this slate. So I feel like he has to at least be considered if we're fading the top guys.
I'm still tilted over that last week. Jesus. Corey Clement played 1 snap last week and he got a touchdown. And Boston Scott stepped out of bounds. Both those touchdowns, just my goodness. And then, Miles Sanders didn't really help himself either. He dropped 2 easy pass attempts from Wentz late in the fourth quarter. But I guess my only concern with that call, the Eagles just love to throw the ball. It was clear that the only thing that was working for the Eagles was running the ball against the Giants, and they just have a clear preference to want to throw the ball, and it just raises my concern. There's no reason Miles Sanders should have had just 15 rushes. The way he was running that ball, he should have had at least 20. He was that effective coming off that injury. So yeah, that's definitely the hole I would poke at Miles Sanders, especially being the resident Eagle fan here on the show. I hate playing Eagles, but talent's there with him. I just get nervous with just the overall rational coaching aspect of
Yeah,
it.
I get it, man. He is so underutilized. It's not even funny. So I've been watching almost every single week because I have him in redraft leagues, and it's been a frustrating go because, man, he is just so electric. Almost every time he touches it, it's like it feels like he gets 8 yards. So, it's just, I don't know. It is what it is. We'll kind of move on from the running back position unless you have anything else to add. We can kind of move over to wide receiver.
Did you mention Damian Harris by any chance?
I did not, but yeah, that's a good call. I like Damian Harris a lot. We mentioned the huge rushing edge that the Patriots have or the Texans this week. We've been picking on that Texans rush defense all year. The downside to him, obviously, is he doesn't catch passes and he's not going to get a lot of touchdowns with Cam stealing it. So that's the big downside for him.
That's a good call. You need 100 yards and a touchdown with him to get to 20 points there. I guess one other guy I would consider, he's definitely going to be used one final week before Myles Gaskin gets off IR, and that'd be Salvin Ahmed. I mean, look what the Raiders did to the Broncos last week. Only 4 rushing touchdowns, 193 yards. He's only 4,800, and he's going to get a majority of the carries. So if you want to go to the bargain bin there, that's probably one of the better options in regards to going that cheap there.
Yeah, I could see that. All right, let's move on to wide receiver. So we have what? Towards the top end, we have Julio. We have Michael Thomas in that game. I don't know if I prefer to play either one of these guys. I think Keenan Allen's the high-price guy I'm going to more often than not. Other than that, I'm kind of fishing around that 5K range. And I like me some Deontay Johnson. Pretty much all the Pittsburgh wide receivers I really like. But, man, Deontay is always criminally underpriced. He's the third priced Steeler wide receiver, and he's had double-digit targets every single game that he's started and finished. I mean, every single game that he has played the full time, he's had over 9 targets. So it's just the opportunity there is there for him in a really, really good matchup. And, if they can just be somewhat competitive in this game and force them to throw it, that's an option that I'm looking to more often than not. I know there are some guys that I haven't mentioned that you prefer down at the even lower range. The one cheap guy, if we're talking cheap going down in the barrel, I'm going down to Rashad Perriman. With Joe Flacco, he seems to really like him for some reason. They have a good chemistry deep down the field. He can hit big plays. If you're needing, I'm probably not just playing him by himself. I'm probably playing him in a stack with Herbert and Keenan Allen as just to have 3 guys in that game. So that's my deep, super cheap option in the 3K range is Rashad Perriman. Otherwise, I don't have a ton of bold calls off the top of my head. Tyler Boyd, we discussed him and Higgins. They're both in play as well. McLaurin's probably in play, even though he's pretty expensive. Otherwise, that pretty much does it for me off the top of my head. Is there anybody I'm missing that's pretty obvious?
Yeah, it's an overall tough week of receiver. Last week was actually quite the opposite. I mean, there was more receiver plays I liked than running backs. My running back pool, I have more desires there versus the wide receivers. Again, it's just a matter of paying for the lowest priced Pittsburgh wide receiver. That just happens to be Deontay Johnson. They're all good plays. I mean, they all seen double-digit targets last week. Roethlisberger's averaging, I believe, 43 pass attempts in the last 4 weeks, where it's just helping all 3 guys get to where they need to go. But again, just being that Deontay Johnson's the cheapest, I'm going to go with him a lot this week, too. In regards to Rashad Perriman, I like Jesse's call there. I mean, there was clearly a preference with Joe Flacco throwing to Perriman against the Patriots that Monday night game before the bye. He barely targeted Jamison Crowder. It was a lot of his pass attempts were going to Perriman, and he's just cheap enough where we could definitely try to squeeze him into our lineups. I mean, everybody's been horrible against the Cowboys, but it's just Dalvin Cook is so involved in that offense. I mean, he had, I think it was 36 touches on Monday night, and that was against a respectable Bears defense. I mean, they just feed that dude the ball at will where, I mean, wait, so you had what? Thielen had 2 touchdowns. I mean, Jefferson had a decent game too, but it's just so hard to trust that's going to happen on a week-to-week basis where Cook gets that many touches where you have both those guys be productive. I mean, I could see Jefferson and Thielen as tourney plays, but I don't know how much I'm going to have of them in cash. It's just it's a very hard week at the receiver position. It's going to take a little bit more, kind of just digging a little bit, but yeah, I mean, right now I guess I have a pretty narrow pool I'm going to go with. I would maybe even suggest Jakeem Grant. I mean, he's still 3,500. He definitely saw a touchdown last week where he's still cheap enough where you can get him against a Denver defense that's not the Denver defense of old where you just need a few targets, you get a touchdown. He's going to hit 4x, 5x where he's going to easily pay off that salary.
You mentioned to me via text Jacoby Myers as well. He's right. A cheap option. He's a cheap option there. The upside is a bit limited. Just the touchdown upside isn't there per se, but he is getting targeted pretty frequently. But the downside there as well is that, Bill Belichick knows how to beat this Houston team. They might run it 35 times. So that's the one downside to having Jacoby as well. So, that's kind of, he's a really affordable price for some reason. Even after the last 2 weeks, he's blown up, but it is what it is. I think I'm probably going to fade him more often than not, but if you need a cheap option, he's definitely at least getting the volume there in New England. So we can move on to the tight end position, I believe. Kind of broken this down already or mentioned a few names. It's Mark Andrews, Goddard, Austin Hooper, Logan Thomas. Am I missing anybody? Oh, Hurst. It's one of those guys. Hurst if Ridley is out. So if Ridley's in, probably not playing Hurst, but otherwise I think Hurst is a good cheap play that is going to be way under-owned. So, all these tight ends are really cheap and affordable, so you shouldn't have too much of difficulty this week plugging a guy in.
Yeah, look, I have no consideration for Zach Ertz, but man, the money have fallen. I didn't realize he was going to be 3,700 this week. Oh my goodness, wow. It was last year. He was priced at like 6,300, 6,400, and he's dropped off that much. Like I said, that's the first time I didn't realize all week. But yeah, I mean, again, tight ends are pretty narrow. Pool of players for me too. Did you mention Jared Cook? I think you mentioned Jared Cook, right?
I did when we were breaking down the game.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, we're pretty much in agreement on the tight end. It's a pretty narrow field there.
Yeah. So I think that pretty much wraps us up. Let's try to build a lineup here. Do you have? I don't have my phone handy. Do you have yours handy?
I do. We'll do a cash game lineup here. So let's start at running back. Let's see how we want to go here. Do we want to go jam it in? Do we want to I guess let's do it this way. Do we want to get both Kamara and Cook in, or do we just want to go one or the other?
Oh gosh, I think one or the other for sure, because I think we can go down to Adrian Peterson there at 4K and we can kind of play that. And I like McKissick a lot as well, so I'd like to either play McKissick or Gio in that game. Like I'd like to play all three of those guys if we could. So,
all right,
I don't really see the need to play both of those guys.
All right, so we got McKissick. We're going to put Cook. So you want to go 3 running backs here?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so that means we're going to put Cook in the flex. That way, in case we need to do anything crazy there later on in terms of a late swap, we have $9,000 to work with. And who was the other running back we wanted to go?
McKissick, Gio, Adrian Peterson, one of those 3. Adrian Peterson's a lock for me if Swift's out.
Yeah, so we're going to play it as Swift is out, and it sounds like he's going to be truly out. So Adrian Peterson, my goodness, I didn't realize he was $4,000. Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely some value right there. Stone cold minimum. So yeah, that leaves us with 31.8 left to go with 6 positions. So at this point now, we should either go to quarterback or defense.
I think we should go defense. Do we have a tight end?
We don't have a tight end yet.
I think we should go defense just to get that out of the way. So, is there anybody you're loving? I think Miami is one of the better defenses on the slate if we can afford them. They're like 3,400. I like the Browns. I like the Washington football team. We kind of mentioned Atlanta being an under the radar play with Jameis. So, is there anybody you're really liking there on the defensive side?
I'd be curious to see if Jameis Winston maintains his turnover-prone ways. I mean, Falcons are at 2,300. I do like your Miami call. It's a little tough to get to them. They're 3,400, but especially if Drew Lock misses and they get Brett Rippon, man, that's gonna be a solid play right there too. As we discussed earlier, we got the Browns in play. The Redskins are in play at 2,900. I guess more or less. I mean, if we're gonna do a cash lineup here, I would say it's either between the football team or the Falcons here.
Let's just save that then. Let's see what kind of salary we have left, I guess.
All right.
So wide receiver, I think Keenan Allen's a lock for me.
Yep, his home road splits.
DK Metcalf, dude, catch the ball. It hits you right in the freaking helmet.
He should have had that. I mean, he had both feet in the back of the end zone too. He should have caught it.
And they're kicking a field goal? You got 5 seconds left. You're on the 10-yard line. Surely you can throw a quick pass. Gosh, what a disaster. That could have been such a huge first half for me.
Yeah, that was a disaster for first half. I mean, well, high expectations off that last game. But again, second game between divisional opponents.
Oh, no. It looks like Joe got disconnected here. Maybe I'll add you. All right, you back?
Somebody gave me the boot. Right. Yeah, I'm back.
Yo, what's up, Jeff Jones? So where were we? Did we plug in Keenan?
Yep, we got Keenan now on the home road splits. I mean, this is a good week for him. I like him too.
All right, so let's plug in quarterback. Do we want to go Herbert and stack him, or do we want to go with Lamar naked? What do we want to do?
Well, how about this? You like Deontay Johnson this week, right?
Yeah.
We'll get him in. Let's put him in now and see what we're left with. I think it's going to be between 4,500 per player. So, yep. So we got 4,625 per player, and we got 4 positions to go. So, yeah, let's go to quarterbacks. So we got Herbert right there sitting at 6,800. You got Roethlisberger at 67. We got Matt Ryan at 63. Cam at 62. I have no desire in Jameis. I just don't know what Jameis were to get. That's just definitely that's a 20 play for me if I'm going to go Jameis. You got Burrow 55. You got Alex Smith 53.
For me, it's Herbert or Lamar. Those are the two that I would like to play.
Yeah, it's we're so used to seeing quarterbacks. I mean, at 8,000, but again, we don't have Mahomes, Russ, Kyler, or Josh Allen this week. So even Lamar at 7,300 just seems like a bargain too. He's 500 off Herbert.
I guess it just depends on what kind of price we have or what kind of salary we're going to have left.
Yeah, let's plug in Lamar and see what we could do here. So it's going to be kind of tough here. So we got 3,700 per position for 3 to go. So I guess we might as well get the defense done. Being that we got Lamar at 73, it's almost kind of telling us we might have to go to Falcons at 23. Maybe we could try to get the football team at 29, but let's go with the Falcons for now. So that leaves us with 8,900, and we got to fill 2 more positions.
What 2 positions do we have to fill?
We got wide receivers 3, and we got the tight end.
Okay, so that tells me that we're not going to be able to stack up Andrews with Lamar. We're going to have to play Lamar naked. So for me, it's so tough. What's Hurst's price?
We got Hurst at 44.
Okay, well, then he's too high, I think, too. Then I'm going to go down to either Goddard or Hooper for me.
Okay, so we got Goddard at 38 and Hooper, I think, is 39. Yep, he's 39. Hooper against the worst, I guess, apparently the worst team against tight ends in the Eagles. I mean,
Yeah,
what did you do last
I'm
week? I think
fine
he
with
got
either
6
one of
targets.
those guys.
He's due for a bounce back spot. 2 targets last week. I mean,
They've had really bad weather their past 2 games, though. They've barely thrown the ball, and they haven't done anything in the air. I think Baker's thrown for like under 150 yards the past 2 games because the wind and rain and everything else has just been chaos for those games.
yeah,
So
that's a game theory thing there. If we think the Browns are going to do the same thing that they did to the if you think the Browns are going to do the same thing to the Eagles that they did to the Texans, it definitely takes Hooper out of play. But man, call me a homer here, but I think the Eagles are going to at least kind of make it competitive. Where I don't know if they're going to be able to like go 210 rushing yards like they did against the poorest Texans rush defense. But let's put Hooper in. Let's get him in there. See what happens there. So it leaves us with 5,000 for our last
for a wide receiver.
Yep. So we got CD Lamb at 5. We got Emmanuel Sanders at 49. You got Jacoby Myers at 49. You got Valdez Scantling at 48. Corey Davis, Tim Patrick, Curtis Samuel. You got Alan Lazard coming off injury this week. We don't know about Devontae Adams' status as of yet. Seems like he's truly questionable. You got Michael Pittman at 45. Willie Snead's had a decent last 3 weeks. Zach Pascal, Jalen Reagor. And I mean, hey, there it is. We got Brashard Perriman at 4,300.
Yeah, we could go Perriman and then go up at defense.
That's what I was thinking too. That would get you to the Redskins at 29, and then 3,000 is the Browns. Patriots at 3,000. Yep. Football team at 29.
All right, I guess let's do that. Man, that scares the living hell out of me playing Perriman in cash.
Hey, you know what? I mean, let's go to his game log again from the Patriots. I mean, he was targeted 7 times. I mean, 5-1-1-2 in back-to-back weeks seems extremely unlikely. But I mean, if he can maintain 7 to 8 targets again, I mean, he'll return that salary.
Okay, so
here's what we got. So we got Lamar at quarterback. At running back, we got McKissick and Adrian Peterson. At our flex, we got Dalvin Cook at 9,000. Our wide receivers are Keenan Allen, Deontay Johnson, and Brashard Perriman. At tight end, we got Austin Hooper against the Eagles. And our defense is the Redskins. I'll never get it right. The football team against the Bengals.
Yep.
And I'm definitely going to save it so we can actually review it next week. we seem to do it and we never talk about it.
I know. That's a mistake on my end, I think, for the most part. So I'll be interested to see how that goes. I might plug that one into like a tournament for like $1 or something, just to have a little bit of stake in the game as well. I'll plug it in for a cash game, but I want to plug it in for a tournament as well. Always, if you're going to play a cash game lineup, plug it into a tournament, because the worst feeling in the world is knowing that you finished first out of the field in a cash game. And if you would have had them in your tournament, you'd be about, $1,000 richer. So always plug those cash game lineups into at least one tournament, just to, get that upside that you would like to have every week. So that being said, I don't really have a whole lot else to add. I think we can probably get ready to sign off. Is there anything else that you wanted to discuss before we closed it out here?
Yeah, I mean, as we said last week, definitely pay attention to the values that open up once we get to the Friday injury reports. Again, this, as we reiterated at the beginning of the show, this is definitely the toughest week that DraftKings has offered us week. This season, I like weeks this week. I'm used to weeks like this. I'm surprised it took this long for us to get to this restrictive pricing. I mean, we were, like I said earlier, we were very lucky to have the pricing that we did, where you could just pretty much jam in whoever you wanted to jam in. But again, if Jesse and I are struggling, that probably means the rest of the field's struggling too. I mean, again, let's see what values do truly open up aside from Adrian Peterson, and we'll go from there. But definitely good luck to everybody, and let's see what turns up and what we're talking about next week. Hopefully it's off like another good week.
Yeah, that'd be very ideal. Going into week 12, we can kind of preview one of our big days that we had in week 11, and then we can kind of start the show off on the right foot in week 12. So that being said, I think this wraps it up. Before we get out of here, I would be remiss if I didn't plug a few things we have going here. So obviously take a look at the bottom of the screen when you get a chance. We have an affiliation deal with my bookie and Thrive Fantasy. Thrive Fantasy, you can use the promo code coaches to get $20 bonus on your first deposit. The my bookie promo is USN 100. For the promo code, you get a deposit bonus on that as well. And then you can also take advantage of the RX Hemp deal that you can see below down at the bottom as well. So please help us out with using those and help yourself out as well, because you get a percentage off on your purchases there. So that being said, make sure you guys are tuned in to our DFS Darlings article on Saturday as well. Joe and I do a joint article every single week. We will post that online on the Fantasy Coaches Podcast website and on Twitter. And that pretty much does it for this Week 11 edition of DFS Discourse. I am Jesse Clark. You can find me at jcrockett24 on Twitter. And I am joined by my co-host, Joe Andre. And your Twitter is?
It's FFJBAPHL.
All right, boys and girls, let's get back on the winning train. Let's do this thing and hit it big, and then let's hope we are joined back next week in Week 12 talking about our winnings. Good luck, guys. Stay tuned to last-minute updates. Peace out.